Israel's informed its allies that it's preparing to send assassination teams to kill Hamas leaders abroad, and that's in retaliation for the deadly attacks on Israeli civilians in the past 2 months. The Times is quoting Israeli sources for that. Now, remember that Israeli intelligence has conducted that sort of killing before in operations previously in the country's 74-year history. Perhaps the peak of that was during the Second Intifada, when Israel took out Hamas leaders in an attempt to stop the wave of attacks in Israeli cities then. And the Times has said that Hamas is believed to have been informed about this by intelligence agencies in the Middle East and Europe.
Right. Now, let's take an example of how, for example, the UK might react to something like that. It was only towards, I believe, the end of last year, if I'm correct, that Parliament even approved labeling all of Hamas, including its so-called political wing, as a terror organization.
That's right. But of course, Hamas is now prescribed in its totality by the UK as a terror organization and, of course, around the world elsewhere. So the idea of Hamas being terrorists is not necessarily so controversial, but targeted killings still something that Israel has this legendary reputation for. People perhaps see this as one of the specialities of the Israeli secret forces, secret services and special forces. Now, if you look at the way that the UK might react, we can think back to that assassination in Dubai some years ago, where British passports were actually used. Some of the killers were using false passports of British people who had dual nationality, Israeli and British. And so that did create something of a diplomatic problem between the two countries. But while Britain did, of course, condemn it, I think there is some sympathy with Israel in the battle it's fighting against terrorism. And so I think that Britain's not necessarily going to get involved at this stage just because it's been reported this way in a British newspaper. This is something that Israel's obviously saying wanted to be public, so it's been leaked in this way, and that's a threat that they're making. And I think the implication is that the killings may indeed take place outside of Israel, the West Bank and Gaza, and that it might be elsewhere in the world that key figures for Hamas are targeted for these assassinations.
I would agree, Jonathan, that certainly that leaking this kind of information and then doing it through foreign media, we should note that's been done quite frequently in Israel's history as a way of getting information out that could be censored within Israel proper, and as you said, maybe as some kind of warning to Hamas.